welcome each and every individual to some Manage Up and daily reporting training for those individuals that are making phone calls. Now, we had kind of discussed where should this, training go. Should it go in the Legacy Partner? Should it go in the 30-minute strategy session? We have decided to put it in, at least we think we're going to put it in, Section 3 Virtual Assistant. Now, in here, we've talked about internalization, and that's where it's real important to understand why do we do what we do? Or if you don't understand, there's a reason somebody went and really thought through this. So just do what you're told, when you're told, how you're told, do it with a great attitude. No, seriously, there's a reason for all of this. And we'll try to explain what that reasoning is. So let's go ahead and dive in. So Pat does a lot of calling at the end of each day. She sends out a report. She sends it out from, is it this template you send it out from, Pat?
Yes.
Okay. So there's this template that Pat sends it out from. You can take this template, don't mess up Pat's template or the master template. Make a copy of this template because yours might be slightly different or you might like it a little different. Some difference might be okay, hard to say, depending on what difference it is that you make. How long does it take you to do your daily up and out on the, this report, Pat?
I would say on average mostly between a minute and 3 minutes, and sometimes probably up to 5, depending on what kind of a conversation I have with someone.
So a whopping 1 to 5 minutes. How does she do that? How does she fit it into her busy schedule? Again, hopefully you all know there's 1,440 minutes in a day, so it's 1 to 5 minutes. And one of the things I love about Pat is she's always looking for the fastest, most efficient way to do a really thorough job. So if you do a template, and let's start off with the top, making sure that you include, who are you going to include? CC, so carbon, 2. So when you send an email, just to make sure, because I trained Ashley in this the other day, and a lot of times people aren't aware of this. And so you can send it to somebody, and that's going directly to them. CC is carbon copy, and that means that it's not to them, but they are carbon copied. It's like they get a copy of it. BCC is blind carbon copy, meaning that if you blind carbon copy me, you know I'm getting it, I know I'm getting it, but nobody else knows I'm involved in it. And so you have people lurking in the background. Why would you do a BCC? Well, I like when people BCC just to give me kind of heads up on what's going on, but I don't need to be, people don't need to be aware that I'm there. Now, when you get an email, this is very important in EVA, or anybody, if Pat sends me an email and I look at it and I don't see my name in it, that means I'm BCC'd. If you're BCC'd, do not, I repeat, do not go ahead and reply all, because people don't know that you're included in it. So it's not anything clandestine or something like that. It's just, sometimes do it. If you're sending out to a bunch of people, like, more than 10, a lot of times you BCC people. So if people reply all of a sudden you get this avalanche of emails and stuff like that. So there is a difference between two, BCC and BCC. Make sure that you're aware of this when you're doing it. Again, write that down. Make sure you're careful. You don't want to make mistakes on that stuff. Pat, any instruction on who it's sent to CC? Any input there on that for new people?
Well, just to yourself and then to all of the other EVAs.
Okay. All right. And it may be all of them, it may be some of them, there might be added, subtract. There's a number of different reasons why somebody would be carbon copied, CC'd on something like this. And so you don't want to over-communicate, and you don't want to under-communicate. It's perfect communication that you're looking for. Okay, let's go to number 1. And what can you share about this, Pat?
It's a way of briefly tallying what you've accomplished. So how many calls you've made, how many people you've talked to, how many people you've gotten a BC from, how many appointments you've set, how long it took you. And it's just a quick and easy way of being able to look at that. Cool.
And the importance of this is for the individual, for you individually. We all like to see big numbers, and we all like to see, lots of, talk-tos and appointments set. That often doesn't happen more than one day in a row often. Pat, how do you handle that emotionally when it doesn't go exactly how you want it to go?
I'm sorry, Mark, how do I handle
it emotionally?
Oh, if it doesn't go the way I want it to go?
Mm-hmm.
That's a growing thing. I've progressed. It used to be pretty frustrating. And sometimes it still is on occasion. But mostly I just try and focus on doing my best and offering someone something I think will be helpful. And if people aren't interested, there are times of making a lot of phone calls and never getting anybody either. But I think the focus is on how you're doing your job.
Good. And personally, I love when people get frustrated. People like, really, Mark? Oh, yes, I do. There's 3 elements to frustration, so you can control your frustration: how hard you work, how much you care, and your level of expectation of yourself, the system, and others. So most of the time people don't like frustration. I like when I get frustrated. I like it even more when other people get frustrated. So if you get frustrated, that's really good, because then I don't have to be frustrated because you're frustrated. So frustration is a positive thing. It's causing us to have a dimensional breakthrough. And so if you're not getting the results that you'd like to get, it's okay to be frustrated. Good to talk to somebody about it, because it might be the group of people you're calling. It might be the script that you're using. It might be the time of day that you're doing. There's a whole bunch of, or it might just be life. Sometimes, a lot of times in calling, people will hang up with you. They might even swear at you. So there's a whole bunch of different things. So don't just accept things are for what they are, because we are human beings and we can alter things. But again, don't let it burn you out. It's just you're one conversation away. I can share this. So Synergy, many years ago, we were getting killed. It was when we first started the company, and man, things were not going well at all. And I had called all week, and it didn't work. I came in on Saturday, made all kinds of calls, and I was so tired and discouraged, and it looked like we were going to go out of business. And at 5 o'clock on a Saturday, I talked to somebody, and all of a sudden, one call, that one call made the difference, everything. So I talked to him. He says, that's interesting what you're saying. I'm going to introduce you to somebody. His name's Jack Eastman. That one introduction went ahead and turned everything around for Synergy, brought in over $250,000 in sales over the next couple of years. It was just a lifesaver. So it's interesting. Often you get that one call when you're, after you feel like giving up. So one more call. So I kind of have a rule when I'm making calls. If I have a good call, always make another one, because there's often 3 calls really good right next to each other. Make a good call, and there's something about the energy, and you get another one and another one. So I always like to go ahead and when I get a good call, get another one. If I have a bad call, then I always go, okay, one more, because this one more is going to be just, I'll get it. So a lot of it's mental in how to go through it. I also see over here where we have scripts. What about that, Pat?
So for that, you can put in a link to the script that you are using, if you are using one for a particular call.
Cool. And hopefully you all know how to do links. You just go ahead and highlight it, go up to this little chain link up here, click on it, and then it goes ahead and then paste in the URL right there, and you've got the scripts. Personally, I hate scripts, hate them like crazy, but they work. And so use the scripts, but, talk whoever's mentoring you. Sometimes just do it. Just do it. You're told when you're told how you're told, do it with a great attitude. Other times there's flexibility. They'll give you some direction on that. This is largely for you, but other people will look at it. And if you're leading or mentoring somebody, make sure you look at it. Number 2, details. What about this?
is where you put in, excuse me, specifically for each conversation, how long you spent talking, and then what you talked about and accomplished in the conversation. And I think of like two things primarily when I'm doing that is how to concisely communicate what transpired in the conversation, and then for the purpose, I guess I should say, partly of when other people go into a record, being able to look and see what was the last contact that was had with the client, and also kind of the history of all the conversations that you can skim through.
And this is why I adore Pat, because sometimes people will put nothing, like there's nothing, or they'll put things that have no significance. But Pat, when I read hers are tight, like what's significant, what's important, and it's very tight, so as few words as possible, but you got to say what you got to say, but making sure it's significant. And I believe, you first type it into MCAT and then copy and paste it into this. Is that what you do?
I do, yeah.
Okay. So in MCAT, that's a CRM system. Hopefully you know how to use that. So you put it in the notes, and then do you have this in a tab and you just copy and paste it as you go through it? So you type it into MCAT, copy it, paste it into here as you're making calls?
Yes.
Okay. So that's why Pat's able to do it so fast. She doesn't retype it all. She copies and pastes and boom, put it right in there. Okay, good. All right. Anything else on this, Pat?
I don't think so.
Ashley, any questions on the send or number 1 or number 2?
No.
Okay. All right. Link to boss, operations, leaky pipe, link to 30-minute. All right. What are these things here, Pat?
Those are things that are just available to you to be able to look at different aspects of the business, different how you can improve on how you're dealing with certain conversations and certain people for the 30 minutes for the BXR. So it's just kind of right there, and you can click and have it at your fingertips if you need it.
Man, I love this system. That's so cool. Nice. Okay. Number 3.
So here is where you can just talk about your day, talk about what you learned, if there's something that you think you would do better at if you had more training for that, anything you enjoyed, and what you think you could do to make a better call or do a better job.
So this is really, really important. And Pat, are you going to be working with Ashley as she does this report and gets into phone calling? Will you be reviewing over her work in detail? Do you know?
I don't know. I can, but I
think that's a great idea. We'll just make that. Can you do that, Pat?
Yes, I can do that.
Excellent. And will you do a far, far, far better job with her than I've done with you, Pat? The answer to that is yes. Yes, that's an easy answer. Like she's just thinking, should I say this to Mark? Like, can I be truthful to him? He's done pathetic. She's such a sweetheart. Another reason I like her. And so it's very important in leadership. And so Avalinda was working with Pat and did, I think, a good job. I don't think I've done a very good job. I glance through it. I try to get the highlights. I try to pick up some of the stuff. But I don't think I do a very good job. And so a lot of this is almost self-therapy. It's asking questions where you're continuing. I think people go one of two directions in making phone calls. They either, like Mike Katura, he had autism and he worked with Synergy for 23, 24 years. And with him, I would go ahead and say, Mike, it's not that, he'd get all upset, all dramatic about stuff. And I'd like, Mike, it's not that big a deal. It'd be like, oh, okay. And And as soon as he settled down, I'm like, it's a huge issue, Mike. He's like, what? And so what we mean by that, we all have some autism. What we mean by that is it's not that big a deal, so don't take it too serious. But like a leaky pipe is not going to destroy a house unless it's not attended to. And so I think people have a tendency to either take what they're doing too seriously when they're making phone calls. And so they're like, oh my gracious, every call every day's got to be, and so if you're frustrated, talk to somebody about it. If you want to improve, talk to somebody about it. They might just say, it's okay. Like, it's okay. One of the things I love is when I make phone calls and it doesn't work. I love when people are on because they're like, oh, you mean it doesn't work for you? Oh, yeah, a lot. And so Pat will help you. There will be others I'll kind of keep an eye on. What's real important from a leadership perspective is that when somebody's new on it, to watch them very carefully. There's nothing worse than somebody doing something for a month, 2 months, or 3 months or longer, and then somebody says, why are you doing it that way? It's like, well, I've been doing that from the very beginning. Well, that's the wrong way to do it. It's like, that would have been nice to go ahead and have somebody teach me that. So the first few and then the first week, to make sure you're really micromanaging Ashley. Ashley, when new people come on and you do what Pat's doing with you. So that's also another reason, Pat, it's so important because Ashley will tend to model you. And so if you're a good parent, if you're a good mentor, she will more likely than not, she will be a good mentor. If you're not, well, then it's never been demonstrated to her, on strong mentoring and strong micromanaging, making sure that people don't practice in mistakes. Like if we're going to do it wrong once, get it corrected so we don't have a habit of doing it in an improper way. I think the other mistake that sometimes people take it too serious and they get burnt, they burn themselves out. It's like, hey, this is hard. You'll get better every day, every week, every month. You just get better and stronger, and eventually you'll actually, grow to like it. The other thing that I think people make mistake is they're like, well, I'm doing my job. Well, your job is to produce results, and if you're not producing results, well, then we're not doing our job. But that's not just your responsibility. That's all of our responsibility. A part of it is the function of what types of calls you're making. So it really bugs me, and we're still working on the systems, it really bugs me when we don't give those who are making phone calls the best phone calls to make. Like that's like, picking apples from an apple tree and going to the top when there's ripe ones on the bottom. Like it makes no sense. Like let's do the best ones. Now, when you're making calls, there's different types of calls, different experience level of calls, and so the more experience you can get, the more training you can get, the more all of that, the better calls you're going to make, the better calls you make, the more, the better results that we're going to get too. So, again, if you're frustrated and if you're not getting the results you want to talk to somebody because they can maybe change that or give you an encouragement or tweak it or give you different types of calls to make. So don't just suffer in silence and don't just accept it and say, well, I'm making calls. I mean, no, we need to be setting up appointments too. Okay, number 4. Pat.
Planning out your next day. Very important to do. Get your mind set on what's going to happen, the types of calls you're going to make, and just a way of preparing for what the next day is going to look like.
And I cannot emphasize this enough. This is the other thing in leadership, Pat, and training, and Ashley and others. So everyone, Ashley thinks she's going to learn the most from Pat. Like we think we learn the most from our parents, but we actually learn the most, I think, from our children. And so you learn the most by mentoring somebody else. And so, I've mentored Pat some, but she will learn more from mentoring Ashley than she does from me mentoring Pat. And so the other thing that you want to watch is people will tend to do something right for some period of time. It's the strangest thing about a human brain is that the tendency is Ashley will do something right for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and it's like, oh, okay. And then you kind of, let them ride the bike, and all of a sudden they crash into a car. And it's like, you were doing so good. So you do want to keep an eye. Once they become confident, it's called the teenage principle. Once they become confident, they start to get sloppy, like teenagers sometimes do. So be very careful about that. This is so critical. You have to plan your day. You'll have so that before the next day's calls, you need to know what's the group, what's the demographic of the group, what types of call am I going to make. I don't know. It's like your subconscious. Seriously, I'm dead serious. It's like your subconscious when you're sleeping. You get a great night's sleep. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to stress, but you wake up and you have an idea. So make sure that you're planning the next day's call. And then at the end of the week, the same thing. Make sure you have a really good idea of what calls are you going to make next week. What are your goals? So much of making calls is mental and being prepared, and you'll have a lot less stress if you're planned out rather than kind of just winging it or doing something at the last minute.
True.
Cool.
I'd like to add something else too, Mark, and this is my system, but it works really well for me. We in MCAT, we have my buckets, so you can keep track of when you need to follow up with people there. But I also keep a paper calendar, a notebook, and I write, for example, today I wrote down 3 p.m., Ashley and Mark recording. That's not something I would put in MCAT, but I do that even, when I make an appointment, and so I put this in there when Ashley and I decided that this would be the time. And then I just keep that right next to me as I'm working, and I write in it those things that I think I need to really remember, and it's been wonderful for me. And even I sometimes use it too, even for like really important client calls. If I'm, want something a little bit more detailed about what I'm going to do, I put that in there too.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, is there any of this other stuff, Pat, here that we need to address, or is that just stuff?
I would just kind of a little bit more specific kinds of information about going through each one.
Okay, cool. Pat, anything else that you have that you'd like to go ahead and share with individuals learning how to do this?
I don't think so.
Okay. Ashley, anything else, any questions you have? All the future trainees going through EVA, and this would be great for legacy partners too, great for virtual assistants, anybody making phone calls. I'm telling you, this keeps you on track. It motivates, inspires you, disciplines us to do the things that we should do. Ashley, any questions? Now all the future weight of everybody, Ashley, is on your shoulder. They're hoping that you're asking a question that they're thinking right now. Any questions you have, Ashley?
I don't have any questions. I think that Pat did an amazing job of explaining it all.
Right?
And why we do everything.
Right? Absolutely.
But something Pat did say, she keeps a journal next to her.
Yep.
At the beginning, we learn we need a hardbound journal. This is another explanation of why it's a good use.
See, this is what's amazing. People, I think in school, we often get in the habit of being taught something that we never have to use again in our life. So we kind of say, oh, what's being taught isn't really that important. There is so much work put into the certification, the Legacy Partners, VA, and EVA certification. Like, we work so hard to make sure you're never taught anything that you're not going to use. So it's really, really, really important that you do learn all this. You take notes, go back through it at second time if you need to make sure you nail it, because we know that good people have to be told once to do something, average, good to average people. You have to be told more than once while you're below average. Great people never even have to be told once, like they're thinking into the future. They're saying, hey, what do I need to do? And with clients, with our clients, that's what we want to do, is we want to give them great service. We want to be thinking, what are they thinking before? Pat's great at this. Like, she thinks in the future, like, what's Mark going to ask of me? What does he want? What's he looking for? She's always looking at saving me time, and I love that as well. Hopefully this has been helpful to all of us. Have an amazing day, and always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. God bless. Have a great day. Bye-bye.